Hey, small group leaders. So, this month, what we're going to be talking about is environments that foster connection. So, Andy Stanley, who's the lead pastor at North Point Church down in Atlanta, in his book, Deep and Wide, he talks about how the environments that we do ministry in, the space that we do ministry in, they all send a message. And whether we realize it or not. And so, what I want us to start thinking about as small group leaders is a space that we are meeting in as a group, is that sending the right message? Is it sending the message of we want to actually foster connection? We want to create real relationships with people. And so when you look at Grace Church, we have the cafe space. So the cafe is a really, really incredibly designed space. You have the cafe where there's coffee, you have baked goods all the time. Everybody loves food, everybody loves coffee, so people are always going to go there. There's also tons of really, really great seating. There's also the fireplace. It's just a really, really warm, relaxed, welcoming environment. And then also when you think about the slide that's in the kids area, what that message sends is, hey, we really care about families and we care about your kids here at Grace, and we want to provide a really, really fun atmosphere for them. We want to provide something great for them. That's the message that it sends. And we were intentional about that. Now, when we think about home groups and how we meet, just in our homes and everything like that, sometimes we become blind to the messages that our spaces are actually sending because we're used to it. We live in those rooms. We are there all the time. So sometimes we just stop noticing it. But when other people come over, they realize, oh yeah, here's like some dirty socks just laying at the foot of like the couch or something like that. Or, oh man, like the sink in the kitchen is like just full of dishes and nothing's been done or anything like that. And so what we want to do as leaders is we want to make sure that when we are meeting in a space that we are really setting that space up to send the message of we want to foster relationships. We want to foster connection. So let's talk about a little bit what that might look like. What are some things that'll do that? Well, number one thing that I've already talked about is this idea of food. Food is such a great connecting point for people. And so what I'm not saying is that the leader or whoever is hosting every week has to provide a meal that'll feed everybody. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is that it can be beneficial to even just provide a snack every week. And that's something that you can ask somebody else in your group to do. It doesn't have to be on you as the leader. You could say, hey, who would be willing to bring like some chips this week? Or who would be willing to maybe bring some like fruit or something like that? It doesn't have to be a lot. It could be simple. One thing that one of the members of my group that used to host, what they would do is they actually always had apple cider during the winter. And so we'd come in, we'd all start talking, we'd all have apple cider together. And that was fantastic. It can be something as simple as that because having food prepared or something like that, it can just be so hospitable, it can be so welcoming, and it's just something that's very relaxing to people. So I'd encourage you to think about doing that if you're not already. Also, another thing is seating. Up in the cafe space, we have tons of great seating areas. They're fantastic, really comfortable. So I want you to start thinking about that too in the place that you're meeting. Is, do I have enough seating for everybody in my group? And is it comfortable? Or is it too cramped? Do we not have enough space necessarily where we're meeting right now? Do we maybe need to try a different room? Or what you can do is if you feel like you don't have enough space as a leader, ask somebody else if they'd be willing to host. And it doesn't always have to be the same person. Hosting can be a shared responsibility as the group. Because we do want to make sure that we are having enough space for everybody to be able to sit comfortably. I used to live in this really, really small apartment in Minneapolis just this past year. I never hosted while I was there because it would have been miserable. So I just always asked somebody else in my group if they'd be willing to host. It's totally something that you can do. And who knows, maybe somebody will find that they really, really enjoy hosting, or you might find that somebody in your group has the perfect place for it. Another thing that I want to talk about in this idea of seating is something that we call an open seat mentality. And what that means is that do we always have enough space for somebody else to be able to join the group? Is there always one chair that's open when we meet? And that one chair represents the next person who's going to come join the group, or the next person that we're going to welcome into this group. If we're going to be a community that really welcomes in other people into these connections that we talk about here at Grace, then that's going to be something that's on the forefront of our minds when we're thinking about our groups and the environments we are in, is do we have enough space to welcome other people into it? And if you don't, I would just want to encourage you that maybe it's time as a group to start thinking about if we're full and we've been meeting for a while, maybe it's time for us to multiply into 2 groups. So that way we can continue to welcome other people into these connections that we talk about here at Grace, which is really our goal, is we want to see everybody who comes to Grace connecting in these groups. And so sometimes we have to be intentional and multiply our groups so that we can continue to welcome people in to these environments that foster connection. And one other idea that I think can be really helpful is to sometimes change up the environment. And so what I mean about this, and so even if you meet in like a coffee shop with your group, this is still something else that you can do. What you could do sometimes is make the decision to do something different. Maybe just go out for a meal with your group. Go pick a restaurant, just go out. Or maybe it's we're going to go to a movie. Or maybe it's like we're going to go ice skating together or something like that. Pick a different environment that's sole focus is just to build relationships. Just for the group to have fun, just so they can talk, just so they can start to build these friendships. Try switching that up and doing that every once in a while. And I think what you'll see is once you start doing stuff like that, if you're not already, once you start doing these more just kind of fun outings, I think what you'll see is relationships going deeper, real friendships being built, and then you'll see those people making connections outside of normal group time. I think you'll start to see your group starting to connect, starting to hang out more, starting to really do life together outside of the normal group time. So that's what I want to encourage you with. I want to just encourage all of us to really start being intentional about, are the places that we are meeting, are we doing a good job of setting them up to intentionally send the message of, hey, we were expecting you, we are happy you're here, and we want you to be able to build some real relationships here at this small group. So with that, that's the end of the lesson. We will see you guys again next month.